What's going down, everybody? It's your boy, that guy, my high, tuning back in for another reaction. This time we got the band that bulldozed the building. Bruh. I mean, I've heard of people tearing up floors, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to my dog Church and then the whole, you know what I'm saying? Raise hell, eat cornbread squad, you dig what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, they've torn some shit up. Shout out to all the other people we know. I want to say I know there's some other incidences where things started to kind of get torn up and people tore some things up and yeah. But let's just see. I mean, this has to be wild if there's a whole like video about just this band specifically. But yeah, shout out to them, or not shout out to them. Shout out to all the members. That's what I was about to say. What I was supposed to say. Shout out to all the members. Before we jump into that, we have to give praise to all the members doing their thing. I really appreciate you guys and all the people who have joined. We got Driver's Thoughts, Lynn, Ryan Parks, Token, Taylor, Mad Creeker, Jane Doe, Liz, Misty Summers, Nugget, My Hood Life, and Gary Willis. Those are all the members right now. If y'all want to be a member, you want your name shouted out, you want a little bit of praise from your dog, Mile High, man, I need to, we need to get this going. Hit that join button, man. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this. We got the band that bulldozed the building. Let's go.
The 1980s saw an influx of noise rock and experimental music in Japan that would take the underground scene by storm, with artists being more brash, courageous, and downright chaotic in their sound and performances. One of the standout groups in this decade...
See, and I guess it would be just, I mean, only right if this was like one of those crazy, like heavy metal, demonic bands and shit. And I don't mean demonic as in like they're like devil worshippers. I mean, I'm sure there's some bands out there that, that's their thing. But, the whole like idea of some of like that hardcore rock, like that shit's scary. I ain't gonna lie. It's scary, bro. Like, I mean, the voices, the screaming, it's intense. You know what I mean? It's very intense. So I guess it's probably only right that it was, one of these bands that did it. And it's crazy that it was over in Asia, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I know they like to replicate and, recreate their versions of like what we do over here in America. But yeah, anyways, let's go.
Was Hana Tarash, a group that formed in 1984 in Osaka and really pushed the norms of what music was at the time. Now, I've said that exact statement quite a bit when talking about the music that we discuss, whether that be Mayhem, Satan Panonsky, or Gigi Allen. And while it may be a true statement when talking about those acts, Hana Tarash were on a different level entirely. Their performances and music were the embodiment of chaos, and some would say the embodiment of true noise punk in general. The insanity they brought on stage was all a part of the act and the music, and this led to some of the most dangerous and destructive live performances in music history, with one of their most famous moments coming from a show where they literally bulldozed into the back of a building while performing. Believe it or not, that is just a footnote in this band's history. And before we talk...
You're telling me that that's a small glimpse, a small blimp on the history of this band is them just tearing the whole back ass end of a fucking building off and being like, yeah, it's part of the performance. Like, that's what you're telling me? No, bruh. No. That's not okay. What?
Let's talk about the history of Hana Tarash. The band consisted of just two members, guitarist Mitsuru Tabata and frontman Yamantaka Ai. The two actually met at an Einstürzende Neubauten gig, a German band that were also very experimental in nature and were almost definitely a big influence for Hana Tarash. In general, it seemed like the duo had a similar music taste and a common goal. Just like their contemporaries, they would implement normal everyday objects into their music. Things like power tools, drills, barrels, saws, and pretty much any strange object they could get their hands on. In a way, it was a liberating concept. Anything that was nearby could be used as an instrument and added to their music. This was definitely apparent in their first album, Hana Tarash I, otherwise known as Hana Tarash 1. This was the first of 3 albums that they would create throughout the 80s, the other ones being Hana Tarash 2 and 3. I've listened to all of these albums in full, and it was definitely an interesting journey to say the least.
Oh, yeah. Okay, hold up. I'm a very open-minded individual. I'm very open. My bad. I'm trying to understand this right here. I'm a very open-minded individual, bro. I'm like, I would consider myself one of the most open-minded individuals, I feel like. But whoa, that was a stretch for me to be like, yeah, that was music. That just sounded like chaotic, just noise. That sounded almost culty. Like they was trying to like put you in this like chaotic trance of like destruction and shit. I don't know. What the
Or not, I
hell?
tried to pick out one of the more musically cohesive moments I could find. But as you can probably tell from that soundbite, there aren't that many. Occasionally throughout the
Facts.
albums, you will hear a drum solo or two and maybe some loose vocals here and there. But besides that, the sounds come from completely random places, and it seems like anything can happen at any time. Which was probably the case, as most of these records seem to be off the cuff and improvised. Although there are a lot of
Bruh.
compelling and interesting moments, it can be a
You mean
harrowing
thrown
thing to listen
together?
to,
I think
and it
that's a
seems
better
like
way.
something you'd want to see being created instead of hearing it. And when it comes to Hannah Tarash, that is definitely the case. In the world of noise punk, intense live performances are to be expected. The chaotic nature of the genre almost calls for it. But
Noise
Hannah
punk?
Tarash were on a different level entirely. There are only a few clips I could find, but they give us a glimpse into the insane world of their live performances. From sticking the microphone in their mouth and screaming at the top of their lungs while the audience just stands there, to actually picking up panes of glass and throwing it in the direction of the audience. One of the more infamous moments happened when the frontman, I, strapped a circular saw to his body during a live gig. He was severely injured because of this and almost sawed his leg in half. In another gig, he brought a dead cat on stage that he found outside and threw it into the crowd. Those few events alone should let you know how
Nigga, you throw a fucking dead cat at me, we are fighting. Oh, I'm pulling a Will Smith and coming and bitch slapping your ass. The fuck? Oh yeah, I'm trying to tackle you on stage like motherfucking old boy and fucking Dave Chappelle. I'm trying to whoop your ass. The fuck? I'm catching you outside, nigga. Catch me outside. How about that? The fuck? What?
these shows were becoming. Unfortunately, these gigs were not well documented, and most of the insane stories simply come from word of mouth, but the best example you will get from a footage perspective comes from this 30-minute clip titled Hannah Tarash Shibuya, Tokyo 1985. The video is obviously low resolution, and it's hard to make out what's happening at times, but what we do see is pretty revealing. Slowly but surely, the duo destroy every single fragment of this stage, throwing barrels around, ripping up the floorboards, and near the end, they actually start to throw objects directly at the crowd, which seems to be a recurring theme at their live shows. Understandably, the people in the crowd start to quickly leave the premises, and at the end of the video, we see the staff of the venue solemnly clean up the destruction that has occurred. It is a great video, and it's a bit of a hidden gem because it not only shows the intensity of their performances, but it also shows the reality behind what they're doing. At this stage of their career, the crowd were literally signing waivers before they entered the venue that essentially absolved Hannah Tarash of any guilt if anything happened. That's how dangerous these shows were becoming. But they were still drawing in pretty big crowds. People obviously wanted to see what Hannah Tarash were like live, and it was that same year that they had arguably their most infamous performance, and it might be fair to say that this was also one of the most insane gigs that ever happened in music history. Although Hannah Tarash were based in Osaka, they had played numerous high-profile gigs in the underground clubs of Tokyo and were cultivating a strong audience of people who wanted to see what they were going to do next. Well, they answered that question in a ferocious manner when they performed in a club in the summer of 1985 and bulldozed into the back of the building they were playing at. Although there is no video of this, there is a pretty insane slideshow of pictures that show us the carnage of this show. Yamantaka I was actually asked about this experience, and he detailed it by saying the following: "We got on this thing and rode it, bang, through the doors of the hall. It'll spin a full 360 degrees, so we were spinning and driving through the audience, chasing them around, when suddenly there was this wall we spun into and opened a rather large hole in. The wind came blowing in. The place was all concrete walls and no windows. We smashed everything. It's amazing, really, how little sound comes out of something you're smashing with all your might." So, yes, you heard that correctly. He actually chased the audience around with the bulldozer until...
I don't know if I'm more concerned about them as the artists doing this shit or the people who decided to sign the waivers to go witness this shit. All of y'all are crazy.
Eventually, he got back on stage and continued his performance. What's interesting about this statement is he did remark on the actual sound. Since that was, in theory, the music that they were performing, it would make sense that he would care about it, but it's also quite comical to think that while he was chasing the crowd around with a literal bulldozer, he was also annoyed that it wasn't loud enough. After they performed on stage for a while, Yamantaka left the stage and entered the crowd. He lit a Molotov cocktail and attempted to throw it onto the stage so that he could fully burn the wreckage that he had just created and potentially burn down the entire building. Luckily, he was restrained, and at this stage, the show ended. The sheer danger and destruction of this gig is on a completely different level than any live show I have ever talked about on this channel. Hana Tarash almost destroyed this entire building in the name of performance, and put everybody in the audience in severe danger. This wasn't something you simply mopped up and brushed away. This was a costly endeavor, and the duo paid the price. Specifically 600,000 yen, the equivalent of $9,000. They also lost the privilege to play in Tokyo for 10 years, and when word began to spread about this insane show, they had a lot of difficulty performing anywhere in the country, as most venues were understandably cautious about booking Hana Tarash. Considering the circumstances, it's not the most severe penalty for such an egregious performance, and it could have ended horribly. If somebody was seriously hurt or killed, the pair could have ended up behind bars, regardless of the waivers that the audience had signed. But amazingly, nobody was hurt, and the duo became an infamous act in the underground scene. By all accounts, this was a historic show, and it gave the duo a new title, the world's most dangerous band. And to be honest, they probably earned it. The rest of the 80s were a difficult time for Hana Tarash, but the 90s were easier when Yamantaka I vowed to tone down his insane performances. This led to various different clubs allowing the duo to perform at their venues again, and while some of these shows were a little bit chaotic, nothing would ever compare to the shows that they did in the mid-80s. They truly were a once-in-a-lifetime act, and it's actually difficult to speak about Hana Tarash from a purely musical perspective, when their live shows are so intrinsically linked to the act as a whole. Japan's noise scene in the 80s and 90s were undoubtedly a genre-defining time, with acts like Merzbow, Hijo Kaiden, and Incapacity.
But I'm just saying that, like, I just don't see anyone who, even people who like are super into like that hardcore, you know, just like crazy, just, you know, like I think they would even have a hard time being like, yeah, them just breaking shit and recording sounds was musical. Like, I just have a hard time thinking that anybody is gonna sit there and agree with that. I think the only thing that they were able to like scathe the way by and being like considered a band is the fact that they were able to get some live performances done. And yeah, like, because even the dude said, like, bro, like, it was, I listened to 3 albums and I had a hard time finding anything that was even relatable in a musical sense to show you guys snippets. Like, it just was noises that were just so random and just made no fucking sense. You know what I mean? Like, again, this would, you would own, like, I get, oh my God, you would have to be one of these crazy people who was willing to sign a waiver to maybe have an ounce of understanding of what was going on and why
all creating projects that changed the scene. Hana Tarash were right up there, and even took it to a new level when it came to their live performances. I'll leave 2 videos linked down below that were created by Pad Chennington. I came across him while I was researching this video, and he does a much better job when it comes to speaking about Japanese noise music from a more academic standpoint. This video was more of a profile piece of Hana Tarash's early work and their insane live shows, but I hope that doesn't deter you from learning more about the genre as a whole, because regardless of the absolute chaos, it is a fascinating world filled with fascinating musicians. But that's all from me today.
I'm sure it is, but I just
next video.
Don't think that they're a good introduction or a good way to appreciate that work. I'm gonna stand by what I said. I just don't think that's it. I just don't think they're a great representation. I just think that they were just really destructive, and because of how destructive they are, that's what got them this video right here. I'm telling you, that's it. That's the only thing I could think of. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. Anyways, man, y'all let me know what y'all thought about this down in the comments below. And yeah, we'll talk about it. All right, catch y'all later. Peace.